Well, here we are. About time. It's been a month since I did the last Watership down. I'm here at the train station waiting for the grumpy old guy to show up so I can give her a ride back to the house. So I decided to say, hey, this would be a good time to do another chapter of Watership Down, done badly by you-know-who. And, of course, the book got torn in half. But the parts we need is in this part. This is episode 34. General Woundwort. Dusk was falling on Efrafa. In the paling light, General Woundwort was watching the near hind mark at Souple along the edge of the great pasture field that lay between the warren and the iron road. Most of the rabbits were feeding near the mark holes, which are close beside the field, concealed among the trees and the undergrowth bordering a lonely bridle path. A few, however, ventured out into the field to browse and play in the last of the sun. Further out, still, were the sentries of the Owsla, on alert for the approach of men or enemies, and also any rabbit might stray too far as able to get underground quickly if there should be an alarm. Captain Serville, one of the two officers of the mark, has just returned for a round of his sentries and was talking to some of the does near the center of the mark ground when he saw General Woundwort approaching. He looked quickly about to see if there was anything at fault. And since it seems that all to be well, he began nibbling at a patch of sweet varnal with the best air of indifference that he could manage. General Woundwort was a singular rabbit. Some 3 years before he had been born, the strongest of a litter of 5. Higher. In a burrow outside a cottage garden near Cole Henley. Might be an actual place. His father, a happy-go-lucky and reckless buck, had thought of nothing living close to human beings except that he would be able to forage in their garden in the early morning. He had paid dearly for his rashness. After 2 or 3 weeks of spoiled lettuces and nibbled cabbage plants, the college gear, the guy that's in the cottage, had lain in wait and shot him as he came through the potato patch at dawn. The same morning, the man set to work to dig out the doe and her growing litter. What a dick. Woundwort's mother escaped, racing across the kale field towards the downs, and her kittens doing the best to follow her. None but Woundwort succeeded. His mother, bleeding from a shotgun pellet, made her way along the hedges in broad daylight with Woundwort limping beside her. It was not long before a weasel picked up the scent of blood and followed it. The little rabbit cowered in the grass while his mother was killed before his eyes. He made no attempt to run, but the weasel, its hunger satisfied, left him alone and made off through the bushes. Several hours later, a kind old schoolmaster from Overton, walking through the fields, came upon Woundwort nuzzling in the cold, still body and crying. He carried him home to his own kitchen and saved his life, beating him with milk from a nasal dropper until he was old enough to eat bran and green stuff. But Woundwort grew up very wild, and like a Kemper's hare, would bite when he could. In a month, he was big and strong and has become savage. He nearly killed the schoolmaster's cat, which had bound him at liberty in the kitchen and tried to torment him. One night, a week later, he tore the wire in the front of his hutch and escaped into the open country. Most rabbits in this situation, lacking almost all experience of wildlife, would have fallen victim at once to but not Woundwort. After a few days wandering, he came upon a small warren, and snarling and clawing forced them to accept him. Soon he became Chief Rabbit, after killed both previous chief and a rival rabbit named Florian. In combat, he was terrifying and finally fighting entirely to kill, indifferent to any wounds he received himself, closing with his adversaries until his weight overbore and exhausted them. And those who had no heart to oppose him were not long in feeling that here was a leader indeed. Wow, what a dick. Woundwort was ready to fight anything except for a fox. One evening, he drove off a foraging Aberdeen puppy. He was impervious to the fascination of the Mistel, whatever the Mistel is. Mistel, M-U-S-T-E-L-I-D-A-E. I don't know what the hell that shit is. And hoped to kill a weasel, if not a stoat. When he had explored the limits of his own strength, he set about work to satisfy his longing for still more power in the only possible way. To increase the power of the rabbits about him, he needed a bigger kingdom. Men were a great danger. But this circumvented by cunning and discipline. He left the small warren, taking his followers with him. He set out to look for a place to suit his purpose, where the very existence of rabbits could be concealed and extermination made very difficult. Extermination for him or extermination for his rabbits that he doesn't like? Don't know. Efrafa grew up around the crossing point of two green vital paths, one of which, east to west, was a tunnel-like bordered on both sides of a thick growth of trees and bushes. The immigrants, under Woundwort's direction, dug their holes between the roots of the trees and in the undergrowth and along the ditches. From the first, the warren prospered. Woundwort watched over them with tireless zeal that had won their loyalty even when they feared him. And when the does stopped digging, Woundwort himself went on with their work while they slept. This guy was not a slacker. If a man was coming, Woundwort would spot him half a mile away. He fought rats, magpies, gray squirrels, and once a crow. When the litters were kindled, he kept an eye on their growth and picking out the strongest youngsters for the Owsla, and trained them himself. He would allow no rabbit to leave the warren, and quite early on, 3 who had tried to do so were hunted down and forced to return. As the warren grew, so Woundwort developed his system to keep it under control. Crowds of rabbit feeding at morning, evening, it's likely to attract attention. He devised the marks, the face mark, the neck mark, the arm mark, the butt mark, half mark, smart fart, all that shit. Each controlled by its own officers and sentries, with feeding times changed regularly to give all a share of the early morning and sunset, the favorite hours of play. That means chow time. Cool. All signs of rabbit life were concealed as closely as possible. Owsla had its privileges in regard to feeding, mating, and freedom of movement. I like that chick. She doesn't like you. Too bad. Come here. Oh. Any failure of duty of their part was liable to be punished by demotion and loss of privileges. For ordinary rabbits, the punishments were more severe. When there was no longer possible for Woundwort to be everywhere, the council was set up. And some of the members came from the Owsla, or others selected solely for their loyalty or their cunning as advisors. Old Snowdrop, growing deaf, but knew more than he about organizing a warren for safety. On his advice, the runs and burrows of various marsh were not connected underground so that disease or poison, if they came, was less likely to spread. Conspiracy would also spread less readily. To visit the burrows of another mark is not allowed without an officer's permission. It was on Snowdrop's advice, too, that Woundwort at length ordered that the warren was not to extend further on the account of risk of detection and weakening central control. This guy reminds me of you-know-who. So basically, he's like the Reinhard Heydrich of the SS of rabbits. And Vervain than Himmler, or is it the other way around? Some shit. Anyway. He was persuaded only with difficulty for a new policy, frustrated his relentless desire of power after power. Now he needed another outlet. As soon as the warren stopped from growing, he introduced the wide patrols. We used to call these in the National Guard on occasion. We used to go out and do infantry stuff. And late night, we would go out on a wide patrol to go hunt down the other guys and harass them. But anyway, that's a different story. The White Patrol began as mere forays or raids led by Woundwort in the surrounding country. He would simply pick 4 or 5 of the Owsla and take them out to look for trouble. On first occasion, they were lucky enough to find and kill a sick owl that has eaten a mouse who has eaten poison-dressed seed corn. On the next, they came upon 2 Owsla, who was compelled to return them to join the warren. Woundwort was no mere bully. He knew how to encourage other rabbits and fill them with spirit of emulation. It was not long before his officers were asking aloud to lead patrols. Woundwort would give them tasks, search for Owsla in a certain direction, or find out whether a particular ditch or a barn contained rats, which later would be attacked in force and driven out. Only from farms and gardens they were ordered to keep clear. And one of these patrols, led by a certain Captain Orchis, discovered a small warrens 2 miles to the east, beyond Kingsclere Overton Road, on the outskirts of Nutley Copse. The general led an expedition against it, broke it up. Prisoners were brought back to Efrafa, where a few of them later rose to be Owsla members themselves. So he's going around attacking all the other little warrens and killing everybody. What a dick. As the months went on, the white patrols became systematic. During summer and early autumn, there's usually 2 or 3 out at a time. There came to be no other rabbits for a long way around Efrafa, and any of those might wander in the neighborhood by chance, but quickly picked up. Casualties in the wide patrol were high, for Elil got to know that when they went out, and often it would take all a leader's courage and skill to complete his task and bring his rabbits or some of his rabbits back to the warren. But the Owsla was proud of the risks they ran, and besides, Woundwort was in the habit of going out himself to see how far they were getting along. A patrol leader, more than a mile from Efrafa, limped up the hedgerow in the rain, came upon General Woundwort squatting like a hare under a tussock of darnel to find himself required then and there to report what he had been doing or why he was off his route. Patrols were training grounds of cunning trackers, swift runners, and fierce spiders. And the casualties, although there may be as 5 or 6 in a bad month, suited Woundwort's purposes. With the numbers needed to keep down, and there's always fresh vacancy in the Owsla, which the younger bucks did their best to be good enough to fill. To feel that rabbits were compelled to risk their lives at his orders gratified Woundwort. Although he believed, as did his council and his Owsla, that he was giving the war in peace and security at a price which is modest enough. Nevertheless, this evening, he came out among the ash trees to talk to Captain Serville. The general was feeling serious, concerned about several things. It was less and less easy to keep the size of the warren under control. Overcrowding has become a great problem, and this despite the fact that many of the does were reabsorbing their litters before birth. While doing so was all to the good in itself, but some of them were growing restive and hard to manage. Not long ago, a group of does came before the council and asked to leave the warren. They were peaceful at first, but offered to go as far as the council wished. But it became plain that the request was not going to be granted on any terms. They become putinate and then aggressive, and the council had to take strong measures. There was still a good deal of bad feeling over the business. Then, in the third place, the Owsla has lost quite a certain number of respect amongst the rank and file. 4 wandering rabbits, giving themselves out to be some kind of embassy from another warren, have been held and pressed into the right flank mark. He had intended later to find out where they had come from, but they succeed in playing a very simple trick, bamboozling the marked commander, attacking his sentries, and escaping at night. By night, Captain Buglas, the officer responsible, had of course been demoted and expelled from the Owsla. But his disgrace, though very proper, only added to the general's difficulties. The truth was, the Efrafa has become, for the moment, short of good officers. Ordinary sentries, Owsla sentries, were not hard to find, but officers were another matter, and he had lost 3 in less than a month. Buglas was good as a casualty. He'll never roll rank again. But worse, Captain Charlock, a brave and resourceful rabbit, was leading the pursuit of the fugitives, had been run down on the iron road by a train. And further proof, if any was needed, of the wicked and malice of men. Worst of all, only 2 nights ago, a patrol has been sent out north, had returned with shocking news that its leader, Captain Malo, an officer of exceptional prestige and experience, had been killed by a fox. Whoa. It is odd business. The patrol eventually coming towards Efrafa from the north. They had been following it, but not yet sighted their quarry. Then suddenly a strange rabbit burst upon them when they were nearing the edge of some woodland. They had, of course, tried to stop them at that moment, the fox, which was apparently following him closely, and came upon the open comb and killed poor Malo in an instant. All things considered, the patrol had come away in good order, and Groundsel, the second in command, has done well. But nothing more had been seen of the strange rabbit, and the loss of Malo, with nothing to show for it, had upset and demoralized the Owsla a good deal. Other patrols has been sent out at once, but all have established that the rabbits from the north had crossed the Iron Road and disappeared southward. It was intolerable that they should have passed so close to Efrafa, gone their way without being apprehended. Even now, they might possibly be caught, but if they were a really enterprising officer put in charge of the search, it certainly needed an enterprising officer, Captain Campion, perhaps. For patrols seldom cross the Iron Road and the wet country beyond. The country near the river is only partly known. He would have gone himself, but with the recent disciplinary troubles in the Warren, he cannot take the risk, and Campion could hardly be spared right now. No, infuriating as it was, the strangers are best forgotten for the moment. The first thing was to replace the Owsla's losses, and preferably with rabbits who knew how to deal ruthlessly with any further signs of dissociation. They would simply have to promote the best they got, draw their horns in for a time, and concentrate on training until things got back to normal. Now I'm going to have to work on the voice for Woundwort, and since he sounds like a real prick, maybe I can make a prick voice for him. Let's see. Woundwort greeted Serville rather abstractedly and went on turning the problem over in his mind. "What are your sentries like, Serville?" he asked at length. "Do I know any of them?" They're a good lot, sir," replied Serville. "You know Majorum, he's been on a patrol with you as a runner. And I think you know Moneywort." "Yes, I know them," said Woundwort, "but they wouldn't make officers. We need to replace Charlock and Malo. That's what I'm getting at." "That's difficult, sir," said Serville. "That sort of rabbit just doesn't hop out of the grass." "Well, they got to hop out from somewhere," said Woundwort. "You better think about it and tell me any ideas that occur to you. Anyway, I'm going to round your sentries now. Come with me, will you?" And they set him off. And a third rabbit approached him. Excuse me. None other than Captain Campion himself. It was Campion's principal duty to search the outskirts of Efrafa at the morning and evening and report anything new. The tire tracks of a tractor in the mud, the droppings of a sparrowhawk, the spreading of fertilizer on the field. An expert tracker, and he missed little or nothing, and was one of the very few rabbits whom Woundwort felt a genuine respect. That's kind of rare, isn't it? Damn. "What do you want me?" said Woundwort, pausing. "Well, sir, I think so, sir," replied Campion. "We picked up a Owsla and brought him in." "Where is he?" "Down by the arch, sir, just this side of it." "What was he doing?" "Well, sir, he says he's come a long way on the purpose of joining Efrafa. That's why I thought you might like to see him." "Wants to join Efrafa?" asked Woundwort, puzzled. "That's what he says, sir." "Why can't the council see him tomorrow?" "Just as you like, sir, of course. But he strikes me a bit out of the ordinary. I say, a distinctly useful rabbit." Said Woundwort, considering. "Well, all right. I haven't got long, though. Where is he now?" "At the crux, sir." Campion meant the crossing point of the two bridle paths, which is about 50 yards away, among the trees. "Two my patrol are with them." Woundwort made his back to the crux, and Serville, being on duty with his mark, remained where he was. Campion accompanied the general. At this hour, the crixa is all green shade, with red gleams of the sun winkling through the morning leaves. The damp grass among the edge of the pass was dotted with spikes of mango bagel, and solaces and yellow angel. What it? All right, a bunch of fucking flowers, okay? A bunch of yellow and fucked up flowers, okay. Under the elderbush on the far side of the track, two Owsla, or council police, were waiting, and with them was the stranger. Woundwort saw at once what Campion had meant. The stranger was a big rabbit, heavy but alert, and a rugged, seasoned appearance and the look of a fighter. He had a curious thick growth of fur on the top of his, kind of a top knot on the crown of his head. He stared at Woundwort with detached, appraising air which the general had not encountered for a very long time. "Who are you?" said Woundwort. "My name is Thaleli," replied the stranger. "Thaleli, sir," prompted Campion. The stranger said nothing. "The patrol that brought you in, I'm told. What were you doing?" "I've come to join Efrafa." "Why?" "I'm surprised you asked. It is your warrant, isn't it? Is there anything odd about someone wanting to join?" Woundwort was nonplussed. He was no fool, and he could not help feeling extremely odd about any right-minded rabbit that would choose to walk into Efrafa of his own accord, but he could hardly say so. "What can you do?" "I can run, fight, spoil a story by telling it. I've been an officer in Owsla." "Fight, can you? Could you fight him?" said Woundwort, looking at Campion. Certainly, if you wish." The stranger reared up and aimed a heavy cup at Campion, who leaped back just in time. "Don't be a fool," said Woundwort. "Sit down. Where were you in an Owsla?" "Far off. The warden was destroyed by men. I escaped, and I've been wandering for some time. It wouldn't surprise you if I heard of Efrafa. I've come a long way to join it. Thought you might have some use for me." "Are you alone?" "I am now." Woundwort considered again. It was likely enough that this rabbit has been an officer in an Owsla. Any Owsla would want him, and if he was speaking the truth, he had the wits enough to escape the destruction of his warren and survived a long journey through open country. It must be a very long journey. There is no warrens within the normal range of Efrafa patrols. "Well," he said at length, "I dare say we might be able to find some use for you, as you put it. Campion here will look after you tonight. Tomorrow morning you'll come before the council. Meanwhile, don't start fighting. Do you see? We'll give you plenty to do without that." Very well." The following morning, after the council had discussed the predicament of the warren due to recent losses, General Woundwort proposed that for a start they might do worse than tried out the big newcomer as an officer in the near hind mark, under the instruction of Captain Serville. The council had seen him, agreed, and by 9:00, Thaleli, Bigwig, was bleeding from a marked gash in his left haunch, had taken up his duties. And there is Watership down. That episode is done. And we're going to give you a big fat hooah. Hooah.